So the first thing that I mentioned in this guideline is to be constructive in your feedback for your peer, right? Like constructive feedback is much more useful. It takes a little bit more time to give constructive feedback. It's much easier just to be like, this sentence sucks and this is written poorly and what the heck does this even mean? Like it's really easy to respond in that way, but it's not easy to use those kinds of responses and to process what they actually mean. So definitely take the extra time to offer constructive feedback. And I've given you guys some examples here of what constructive feedback looks like. Um, what you're going to do is note what they're doing well, right? So if they do really good writing or they make really good examples or their structure is really good, like please tell them that, because what you're doing right is just as important as what you're doing wrong ultimately. And a lot of people will do things right without knowing it. Um, and if they don't know it, they're less likely to do that right thing again in the future. So definitely tell them what they're doing right. That's part of this learning process, right? Explain your experiences reading the paper, and we'll go over that here in a second. And also ask questions that might help the writer better understand what's missing or what needs to change. Okay, so try to put your feedback in the form of a question. Um, so here's some examples, right? Negative feedback. This whole paragraph is confusing. I don't know what you're saying, right? Um, if you're on the other end of that, you're not going to know what's confusing to them. You're just going to know that they're confused, right? And so constructive feedback would look more like, I got confused in this paragraph. Are you saying X? Right? I wasn't sure if you meant X or Y. Like give them a much more specific understanding of like what's confusing, why it's confusing, and what it leads you to think you're maybe trying to say, so that they can see what's like actually on the paper. Here's another example. The first paragraph is fine, but the rest of the paper falls apart, right? Like no one has any idea what that means. All they know is that like, okay, great, I have to rewrite most of my paper, but I don't know how. And I don't know what to change because I don't know really like what fall apart means. So to say like basically the same thing in a constructive way, you'd say like the first paragraph is really clear and explains what to expect. I think paragraphs 2 and 4 would be easier to understand if they're more like paragraph 1, right? So um, basically you're saying in that way that paragraphs 2 and 4 are not clear and they don't explain right enough. They don't explain what to expect, or they're somehow like foggy in terms of what we're supposed to be understanding from them. Right, so that gives your peer at least like some sort of like understanding of what is missing and what needs to be changed. Um, right, so just like try to use examples, try to be as specific as possible, and try to phrase what you're saying in questions instead of making statements, because um, invariably those questions will be a little bit more specific, and they're also easier to process as the person who is being reviewed, right? So constructive feedback asks questions, it points to specific sections or sentences, and it lets the reader know what you're experiencing. Or sorry, it lets the author know what you're experiencing, right? So here you say, when I read this part, I wasn't sure I understood what you meant, right? So instead of saying like, this just is confusing, like you're actually saying like, when I was here in this part of your paper, I experienced, right, confusion, I experienced disorientation, I experienced um, I mean, there's different ways to sort of like phrase what you're experiencing as a reader, and that's much more useful information than like, this part is weird. Okay, so like be specific, and try to be as constructive as possible. Um, so I'm going to show you guys how to use the comment function in Microsoft Word if you haven't done it before. If for whatever reason you can't do it, you can actually just type into the document, but I want you to use bold, underlined, and in all caps if you do that, so your partner can easily like skip through the document from one of your comments to the next comment instead of having to like read through it like searching. Okay. Um, Overall, your review should offer at least 2 comments per paragraph, right? And those comments can all be positive. Okay, it doesn't have to be like you're going through here and like critiquing the hell out of it. Like you, most of your commentary can be positive if you find positive things to say. um, Tell the writer what they're doing right, and also tell them which parts you enjoy. Definitely identify the thesis statement. Evaluate the introduction. So does it accurately forecast where the essay is going and why? And this is part that you can't really answer until you finish reading the essay. Okay, so make a mental note of like what the introduction is saying, kind of like chart out what the introduction is saying, like that the whole essay will do, or what the stuff that the essay will cover. And then as you're going through it, be like, okay, did this actually do what the introduction said it was going to do, right? Does it include a thesis statement? Does it clearly state the subject? Right? And it's like, okay, if you can't find the thesis statement, you can literally say like, I can't find the thesis statement. Or if there's a sentence in there that you think might be the thesis statement, you can always like comment on that sentence and say like, hey, I think this is the thesis statement, but I'm not totally sure. Um, and then evaluate the conclusion, right? Does it feel like a resolution? Does it mirror the introduction by tying various points of the essay together in a way that is harmonious with the introduction's forecast, right? So if you get to the ending and it seems like it's opening a whole different paper, or that the ending is like the ending that would belong to a different paper that didn't start where the paper started, then there's a problem, right? Like you really want the ending to sort of like tie everything up into like a nice bow in a way, and say like, okay, this is where we started, these are the points that we've made, and this is the conclusion or resolution that we get from having read the essay, right? And so like one of the things that a really good conclusion does is it reminds you of all the ground that you've covered as you read the essay, and reminds you how those pieces fit together to come to a specific sort of point. Um, the conclusion and the introduction should definitely, like, obviously they can't be identical, but they should have a clear sort of like symbiotic relationship. They should mirror each other in a sense. And for me, like as somebody who has a really hard time writing introductions, a lot of the time I will write like a working introduction that is absolute crap. I'll write my essay, and then I'll look at my conclusion and be like, okay, what does this say? This is the point that I've eventually worked my way into, and then I'll actually rewrite my introduction based on what the conclusion says. Um, and for a lot of people who are like sort of like really flexible writers who don't know exactly where they're going when they first start out, that's a really good process, because by the time you get to your conclusion, you really know where you want the essay to go because you've gotten where you want to go, and then you can just like retool your whole introduction to match that. Um, and then give the writer at least two, but ideally more constructive suggestions on how to make the paper more readable, more effective. So again, make sure they're constructive suggestions, but be pretty clear about like, okay, like this part right here, I really wanted more about XYZ in paragraph 2, um, or like, I think that it would be better if it expanded more here on this thing, or I'm not totally sure about why this part right here is included or how it connects to your subject, so like maybe some more there would help. And just try to give constructive suggestions, that you as a reader um, would feel good about, and that like you would feel good actually, like if you were going to edit my stuff, the kind of constructive suggestions that you would give me as your professor. Like try to use that same care and consideration for your peers. um, so now I'm going to show you, this is an essay that I just submitted for a blog on Edgar Allan Poe, and I'm going to show you guys how to use comments, right? So the easiest way for me, the way I usually do it, is I'll just like highlight the section that I want to have something to say about, right? And then I will right click and go to new comment. And then it'll bring up this little thing on the side, and you can say like, hey, is this your thesis statement? Right? By the way, that's not my thesis statement. Um, uh, this actually happens to be my thesis statement down here, right? But if you're not sure, you can actually literally go down and say like, oh, okay, wait, actually, is this the thesis statement? Because this, seems to say what you wanted to say. This is my thesis statement, right? And so one of the things you want to do, right, is go to the end of the essay, or refer back to this once you finish reading it, and make sure that the whole essay um, fits with this thesis statement. And really, it doesn't. Like, I'm going to tell you guys right now that this thesis statement is really loose for a paper like this. And luckily, it's not like an academic essay necessarily. It's more of like a blog thing, so I can get away with being like a little bit more like open-ended with my thesis here. Um, But yeah, so this is how that works. If you can't for whatever reason use the comment function, what you can do is hit bold, underline, what was the other one? Oh yeah, all caps, and say like, that should have been all caps, damn it. Hold on. There, like that. And that way it's really easy to see where your comments are, right? Like going through this, I could say, oh, there's one comment, and I could just like address that and then skip to where the next comment is instead of having to like search through it or whatever. Um, yeah, so that's what I have to say about this, and that's how this works. Make sure that your partner's paper is also formatted correctly. Like since this was a blog submission, I didn't format this correctly, but if I was reading one of your papers, the first thing I want to see, right, is your name, um, instructor's name, right, the class title, and submission date. And then up here, you're going to want the page number, right, with your last name. So a lot of people want to do this as a header. Creating it as a header is a huge pain. I really wouldn't do it that way. Shoot, I have to move this over a little bit. There we go. So what you actually want to do is go to insert, right? Go to page number like that, and you want it at the top of the page, and option 3 is top of the page at the right, and then you're literally just gonna like type your last name in next to it, and then hit close. Okay, some really hardcore professors will make you put all of that in the same font as the font for the rest of the paper. I might pick on you a little bit here and there, but I'm not gonna like like subtract points from your grade because your page number and your last name are in a different font. But it's pretty easy to do pretty quickly. So that's how to do that. And again, let me know if you guys have any issues. Try to stay constructive. Try to like the real like uh, the real energy that I want you to put into this is not into like fixing someone else's paper, but to give them an accurate, constructive, and respectful vision of like what you experienced while you were reading it and some of your suggestions for improvement. But definitely don't go into this being like, I'm going to fix this paper, because like you're not going to fix this paper. Like your peer has their own vision for what this paper is supposed to do. Okay, so that's that.